Hello, beautiful souls. My name is Jessie, and welcome back to another episode of Rewired to Inspire. This show where we'll dive into self-love, learn tangible ways to rewire the brain, and discovering your soul's purpose. The goal of Rewired to Inspire is to encourage listeners to begin doing the hard work, to get curious and open to maximizing your life. Our mindset shapes how we live. Depending on life events, traumas, and personal experiences, our mindsets are all vastly different. However, one thing we all have in common is the ability to rewire our mind, to change the narrative, and to pivot our lives. I hope you leave each episode with the belief that you are so worthy to live a life true to you. I look forward to chatting with you every single Tuesday and Thursday and helping you grow exponentially in all areas of your life. Without further ado, here's today's episode. Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome back to my podcast, Rewire to Inspire. I am your host, Jessie Brown, and I am beyond excited for today's episode, if not the most excited I've ever been, while simultaneously being extremely nervous. So if you hear a little difference in my voice today, it is all coming from good intentions. As mentioned on a couple episodes ago, we have our first guest today. It has been a long time coming, and we are starting off strong today with our guest. So today for episode number 130, we have somebody who has in many ways inspired me to begin my podcasting journey. He has in a lot of ways, not even in a lot of ways, this person is the start of my self-improvement journey. And I don't even think he knows that fully in depth to the extent in which he has inspired me over the last 3 years. So without further ado, I am super excited to announce today's guest. Not only is he a tremendously valued friend in my life and in a multitude of ways has inspired me, today's guest is also the founder, CFO, and host of Next Level University. Next Level University is a global top 100 self-improvement podcast with more than 1,300 episodes. You heard that right, 1,300 episodes. And they reach well over 500,000 people in more than 150 countries, and their approach is to help folks improve their life holistically through health, wealth, love, and life. Outside of NLU, Kevin is also a podcast consultant specializing in helping podcasters of all levels grow, scale, and monetize their podcast. Kevin believes in a heart-driven but no BS approach to inspiring, motivating, and educating others on what it really takes to get to the next level. Kevin, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today.
First thing, Jessie, I don't know if you could see, but I was tearing up a little bit in the intro. I'm very, very proud of you. I did not recognize, I would say, the level of impact that I've had. So the fact that I have been able to do that is exactly why we started this in the first place. And I just want to send you all the gratitude. I appreciate that. And thank you for the wonderful introduction.
You are so welcome. Absolutely. Just goes to show sometimes how we don't realize the impact we're making until we realize that later on in life. So
yes,
to kick us off, Kev, there is a question that I want to ask every guest that I have on here as my first question. I shifted it a little bit for you.
Okay.
So the first question that I would love to ask you is, what does mental health mean to you? But more so, I want you to come from the approach as being a successful entrepreneur from an outside perspective. What does mental health mean to you now versus maybe what it did in the beginning of your journey?
I remember when I was in high school, my girlfriend had depression. And I remember her bedroom was in the basement of her mom's house, and that's where we used to hang out. And I remember she had a therapy appointment and she didn't want to go. And I remember asking her, I said, I don't understand depression. What do you mean? You just don't feel good? You're sad? I don't get it. I never could understand what that meant. So if you asked me at 15, 16 years of age, I would have said it was something that wasn't real. It was something that just some people had issues with and other people didn't. At the beginning of my journey, mental health to me was kind of taboo. I'm a tattooed bodybuilder. You know, I don't talk about my feelings. When I was 24, a lot of people know of my story about having suicidal ideations when I was later in life. But the first time I ever thought of the world without me in it is when I was 24. Mm-hmm. Everybody was gone to work. My girlfriend and I at the time lived in this really nice place in Boston with another couple. Our bedroom was on the 3rd floor. It's beautiful, beautiful place. I remember sitting in bed. I was playing Call of Duty. I was playing video games. And I remember thinking to myself, if this is what life is, I don't want to do it anymore. Everything is gray. Everything is bleak. Everything is bland. I am not excited about my future, and I don't think I want to do this anymore. I told my girlfriend, even though I didn't want to, when she got home that night. And that was the first time I ever was recommended therapy. So I lived in Boston. I find a therapist. I drive. I parallel park in downtown Boston, Massachusetts, which is anxiety provoking enough. I walk up the spiral staircase of this old building and I meet my therapist for the first time. And here I am thinking I'm going to cry and it's going to be terrible. I cried, but it was wonderful. That's when I started to understand that mental health is probably the biggest piece of who you are. Because at the end of the day, you can work on your body, you can work on your relationship, you can work on your finances, but the thing that you exist with more often than not is your self-talk. And a lot of mental health is that self-talk. So that's when I really started to understand it. Now, as someone who is perceived as quote unquote successful, mental health is everything because of 2 reasons. 1, I cannot give what I do not have. That's part 1. And part 2, at the end of the day, my energy and my focus is pulled in many, many, many directions. If I don't take care of myself, nobody else can, right? It's my job to try to take care of as many people as possible. And that really is quite draining, honestly. And I've heard many, many terrifying and terrible stories from people, and I've been under a lot of stress. So it really is the understanding now more than ever that if I can take care of me, everything I do is more sustainable, and ultimately I can take care of more people and add value to more people.
Wow. That is crazy to hear as an answer from someone who started that by saying you didn't really understand what that word even meant. It was taboo. And I think that we see that a lot specifically with men. And I do think that this is shifting a little bit, but like you said, even that identity piece of I'm a tattooed bodybuilder, like I don't need mental health. Yet in a lot of ways, simultaneously, mental health is actually what has brought you to be the person you become, because as you said, mental health is you. It's how you show up. It is your identity associated with that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
You're so welcome. You're so welcome. It's a great question. I feel sometimes it's very hard for me to answer questions around it because I feel like I didn't take a road that's sustainable for somebody else. My mental health drastically increased when I left my job and I started this journey.
Right.
Drastically increased. I still deal with anxiety occasionally, but it's more situational anxiety in my throat, and I have an understanding of what's happening. Depression, very little. I have bouts, of course, but a lot of people say, what did you do to help your mental health? I left my job. That's what I did. And then I focused on getting better and understanding myself and self-awareness. But I just want to make sure that I put that out there because I know for a lot of people, this is a long, potentially struggle-worthy battle or struggle-filled battle. Where for me, when I left my job, a lot got better for me. A lot got worse too. But yeah, I just want to throw that out there because I don't want anybody to look at me and say, oh, okay, you have it all figured out, because obviously I don't.
Right. And I think that that's why I'm so passionate about asking this question, because it is going to be so individualized for each and every person's perspective of what that word means to you. And so even you saying, when I left that job, my mental health got better, I think that in a lot of ways, a part of you probably felt like a failure, like you're starting over in a lot of ways, which really ties in the next question that I have for you, which is, on this show, we talk a lot about failure and our relationship with that word and rewiring how we view failure as individuals. And in a society that teaches us that if we fail, we are failures. You go to school, you get an F on your paper. That's it. There's no teaching or learnings from that. And so we start to paint a picture later on in life that if we fail at something, we take that very personally. And something that I've learned a lot from NLU is you guys talk a lot about the word failing forward. Can you tell us a little bit about a time that you quote unquote failed and how you responded to that versus maybe how now you would respond with the mindset of failing forward?
For sure, for sure. At this point of this failure that I'm going to speak to, I had given one speech. So this was my second speech ever. One of our podcast guests, his name is Michael Gorman, amazing human being. He brought us to speak to a group of at-risk children in a very tough area of Massachusetts. There's a lot of crime. There's a lot of poverty. He said, I love the podcast. I'd love for you guys to come speak to my kids. We said, yeah, of course. Of course. So we go. I was a little arrogant because I had just given a speech a couple months ago. It went really well. So I was like, this is going to be fine. This is going to be totally fine. So I roll in with a flashcard that I think had 5 points on it. And I'm like, here we go. Let's go. And I burned through these 5 points in maybe 10 minutes. And it literally got to the point where I had kids come up and do push-ups with me. I had a push-up competition with children and I almost lost. And I remember thinking, number one, I was shattered. I remember thinking that if that was the first speech I had ever given, that would have been the last speech I ever gave. Now, luckily, I had a little proof that I could do it based on the previous one, but I thought of quitting for sure. I thought to myself, there is 0% chance I could ever be a speaker. This is horrible. I am not good. Insert negative feeling here. So fast forward, I think you know this story, the audience really won't, but Alan and I get paid to fly out and speak to 900 and some odd kids and the staff afterwards. I'm actually wearing the shirt we got when we were there. So, excuse me, we do 3 speeches to 350 students each in the beautiful auditorium. Awesome. So we get through those. They all went really well. So we go to the library and we're supposed to do the staff training. And right when we started,
I know exactly what it's like to not know where to turn, to feel alone, helpless, and stuck. My goal as a coach is to help clients from a trauma-informed perspective see your worth and develop self-belief so you may chase your dreams and trust your intuition to live the most aligned, fulfilling life possible. If you're looking to elevate your life to the next level but aren't sure where to start, I would absolutely love to connect. If you're feeling pulled or curious, please use the link in the show notes below to book your free call. I look forward to connecting and supporting you on your own unique journey.
I looked at Alan and I was like, oh my God, we are jeffed. This is going to be the worst. So we had not talked about what we were presenting on. I had never seen the presentation before, and we're standing in front of people who aren't necessarily excited to learn from 2 young looking kids who don't necessarily know what it's like to be a teacher, right? I've never been a teacher. So we didn't do a good job of letting them know we were there to add value, not judge them. It was just an ugly thing. And I literally sat there for 45 minutes while Alan fired through the presentation and we were getting laughed at certain points. It was brutal. It was brutal. So we leave. And the first thing we did is Alan and I got in the car and we just started laughing hysterically. We just started laughing hysterically because of how bad we screwed up. Nothing else. This is our fault. This is nobody else's fault. And here it is. It's the understanding that we made a lot of mistakes leading to that failure, but we can avoid them next time. In the beginning, I did not think that way. In the beginning, to me, failure was final. And when you were going through the question, I was thinking to myself, what's the difference between a mistake and a failure? A mistake, you get to try again. A failure is final. Somebody might come to me and say, I'm afraid to take this test. The first question I ask is, can you retake it? Yes or no? Yes. Don't worry about it. Go do it. I'll pay. I'll give you the $50 to take the test again. You can't fail. You can't fail. It's literally set up so you can't fail. You can keep taking it. You can keep taking it. That's now how I look at a lot of stuff. It's, you lose a client. It's not the end of the world. Like, you can go get another client. It's not the end of the world. You make a mistake. You flub a word. I do it all the time. Right? I have more opportunities to fail than most people because I do so many episodes. So it's that. And then the last thing I would say, just to throw a cherry on top, the people who are the biggest successes in life are also the biggest failures. You just don't know about them. You don't see them because they keep going and they keep going and they keep going. So yeah, that is how I look at it now, but that is drastically different than how I looked at it in the very beginning.
I'm so glad you brought up that last point about not seeing it. Because so much of it is front facing for everybody that's listening. I'm sure part of you is, I would hope, going, this guy's such a good speaker. Like he's such a good, strong podcaster. His word choices, everything is phenomenal. They would have no idea about that story that you shared about your first speech you ever gave, unless you chose to share that. And so I love that you brought up that point of, we don't always see people's failures. We see their successes. And so even right now, before we jumped on the mic today, Kev, I said, this could go terrible. This could go terribly wrong. I am massively nervous. I'm definitely outside of my comfort zone, but a part of me really wanted to fear chase, and I knew it was time to elevate. Was there a part of you that during that first speech knew in some ways you were fear chasing, or were you just hoping for the best?
It's interesting that I pretty much have been fear chasing every day for the last 6 years. You know, so when I left my job, my mental health got better, but my awareness of my anxiety I was very, very honed in the fact that I am constantly living in anxiety. I'm a broke entrepreneur. So yeah, no, I pretty much have lived fear chasing, I would say, for the last 6 years pretty consistently. But now I am capable of handling a certain level of pressure that I never would have been able to. So yeah, I would say that's probably the key to my quote unquote success, is I'm afraid of pretty much everything I do. I just try to give it hell. Like, let me give it my best shot and see what happens. And the other thing too is a lot of the things that I'm doing are kind of in my wheelhouse. Right. So a big podcast, it's still a podcast, and I've done it enough times. I just want to add one point to what we were just talking about. There's a fighter. His name is Chael Sonnen. He's a mixed martial arts fighter, a very great speaker, and he's a very wise gentleman. And he had a quote one time. He said, "The people who say failure is not an option are just completely wrong. Failure is the most likely scenario in many of the things that we do. And the second you put that out there, it's like, this could go horribly wrong. I'm not going to judge you because I've made way more mistakes than you have." So it's almost, I think it's empowering to at least flip the script and say, well, failure is not an option. Of course it's an option. It is the most readily available option. And at least once you understand that, you can then play the odds accordingly.
I love that. Empowering to fail. This is something that, it's imagine if we rewire just our perception of, I like to ask myself a question often of, what would I do if I knew I couldn't fail? And you and Alan, and for anybody who doesn't know, Alan is the co-host of Next Level University with with Kevin. I don't think we mentioned that in the beginning. So if you're like, who is this Alan guy? That's who it is. He'll be coming on here in a couple of weeks. One thing that I've learned tremendously through you and Alan is that mindset of fear chasing. And you guys share a story often about Amy, which is a good friend of you guys, and how many years ago would that have been, Kev, the mall story?
Probably 4.
Okay. So most of you have probably not heard that story. So basically 4 years ago, Kev had took one of his friends to the mall to fear chase. She had a fear. Was it of talking to strangers?
Starting conversations with strangers. Yeah.
Okay. So something that I think a lot of us can definitely resonate with, like that's massively scary to do sometimes. And Kev said, pick you up, let's go to the mall. Let's see what happens. I'll be there to support you as you go on that. And so oftentimes when we hear the word fear, we think of very surface level materialistic things. Sharks, snakes, spiders. You guys like to throw in snapping turtles and airplanes in there, which I think is whatever that fear is. When someone says, what are you most afraid of? My answer 5 years ago would have been snakes. That's not actually my deepest fear. That's just a surface level fear that I had. Now that I understand from a deeper level through coaching with Alan that my deepest fear is actually not maximizing my potential, I now understand why in so many rooms I felt undervalued. I felt out of alignment. From your perspective, Kev, how can somebody begin to identify what their true fear is that might be running them subconsciously so that they can begin to take action?
It's a great question. It's a challenge to do it alone. I'm realizing that more than ever, that a lot of the answers I give, I just want to make sure that the most valuable. I don't necessarily want them to sound the best or like I have the most wisdom. You find someone you trust and you play the why game. I don't know what book this is in, but it's like the 7 whys. You ask somebody a question, and when they answer it, you say why. So it could be, if you had an internal fear, not an external fear, not a snake, not a shark, what is your number one internal fear? And somebody said, rejection. Why? I don't know. Well, if you had to know, why? Like, let's just kind of play the game. Why? Well, because when I was young, I got rejected and it made me feel bad about myself. Why? Right? And you keep digging and digging and digging. Eventually, you're going to get to some sort of root. Eventually. Now, here's the thing. Depending on your level of awareness, depending on your level of self-improvement, depending on your level of reflection, you're maybe not capable of getting to the root currently. That's okay. Right? There's layers and layers and layers and layers. But for the longest time, I just assumed I'm afraid of rejection. That's it. I'm just afraid of, that's it. Everybody's afraid of rejection. Why? And then I started to dig and dig and dig and dig. And why? I think the simplest, most powerful form is I am insecure about my height. Therefore, I connect every rejection I've ever had to my lack of height. So therefore, my biggest fear is also the thing that has been running me for so long. And that was just going from why to why to why, and then reflecting on the fact that that's actually happened. I've been rejected for that. Okay, what does that mean? So yeah, I think in the simplest form, you have to ask yourself why. But I don't know if you can really get to the root of it alone, because there's a lot of things that you don't think you know yet, but maybe you just haven't been asked in the right way. Right? That somebody might be able to frame something in a way that you've never heard it before. Or one of the questions I love to ask is, what does it mean if? So I was talking to somebody today, and I don't remember what the frame of this was, but they were talking about if they failed. And I said, well, what does it mean if you fail? And that's just a new layer. So, I've never really thought about what it meant. I only thought about what it was. Interesting. Okay, cool. So I would say the simplest form, you have to ask yourself the right questions. If you're not capable yet of asking yourself the right questions, find somebody who can ask you the right questions.
Fire.
Thank you.
What would you say to folks off of that if you don't really know if the people around you can guide you properly or actually have your best interest at heart? So when I first started being curious about, I don't even want to say I was curious. Reflecting back now, I think I was looking for answers, but I wasn't conscious to the extent in which I am now. And so I was just looking anywhere for answers without realizing in hindsight, people didn't have my best interest at heart and or weren't in a place that they were able to guide me effectively until I got in Alan's corner who had higher awareness and was able to really show that to me. So what would you say to someone who maybe isn't sure if the people around them are able to guide them appropriately?
Yeah, that's such a challenging thing. I did a video a long time ago of the fact that nobody really knows what's best for you. Fine line, right? Like, it's a very fine line because there's people who might know what's better for you. But I remember in this video saying, unless here's the real truth. Unless somebody knows what your deepest, darkest thoughts are, like your deepest, darkest desires, your goals, all of that, they really can't advise you properly. So I would say you start with asking yourself, who do you feel the most comfortable sharing your full authentic self with? That is the first step. Because if somebody's going to help you and add value and help you understand yourself at a deeper level, they have to understand the depths of who you are as a person first. That's step one. And then I would say step two, really, really take a look at how they treat themselves and how they treat other people and how they make you feel. There's something intuitive about that too of, oh, okay, I feel safe around this person. Okay, cool. That's a good place to start. And then from there, other than looking at their results, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, I don't know if there's a better way than just those three things. It's very hard to know. It's very hard to know because there's a lot of people that are faking it, you know? And even to your point, just because somebody wants what's best for you does not mean they're capable of helping you. I've had a lot of people in my life who they'd say, if you ever need anything, just let me know. And I understand, I do appreciate that more than you know, but there's not a ton of stuff that you understand that I don't understand. Not an ego way, I've just studied it more than you. So if I came to advice, I don't know that it would be constructive.
Right.
Not that you're trying to hold me back, but if you don't understand the journey that I'm on, it's really hard for you to guide me on the journey. So yeah, I think it's that. Who do you feel safe around? Who can you be yourself around? Start there and then strike up a conversation, see how things go, see how the energy goes. You can tell when you find your people, you can tell the feeling, you can tell the energy, you can tell when the conversation resonates in a certain way. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's so true. And so much of us, when we're feeling that fear in any aspect of our life, having that safe person to go to can make it that much easier for us. Just like Amy having you at the mall, having that support can just make it almost like one step ahead. And then once you get there, it can become easier to take that next leap to then find more people that you're able to build that trust with, even though you might not know those people exist or you're surrounding yourself with those on day one. I love your approach of asking that question. Who do I feel the most comfortable around, and starting there and then seeing how it flourishes from there, knowing you don't have to have it all figured out.
Well, some of us are really good at kind of self-diagnosing, but sometimes we need somebody to pitch and catch with. Alan and I do that all the time. Last night, Alan and I recorded 2 episodes, and we were supposed to be done at 6 or 6:30. 6:30 rolls around, and Alan was going through something. And this is how it goes. He just starts talking. And I don't really say much. I just make some noise, and I go, yeah, okay. And that's it. And then by the end of it, he's like, yeah, no, I know. I understand. All right, cool. All right, Kev, have a good night. Enjoy whatever you're doing. He just needs to verbalize it. So even if the person, maybe this is another one, find somebody who's really good at listening. Because if somebody's really good at listening, maybe you'll just start saying stuff that you wouldn't normally say. And anytime you put something out there that you've never put out before, you're going to get something back in return.
I like that. And if you're sitting there listening, wondering, oh gosh, I just want you to know that you're not alone in this. This is something I think we all experience in some point in time of our life, especially if we decided to embark on something that folks around us haven't really gone on to. So for example, podcasting, I didn't really have anybody around me to learn from. So I looked up to people and I chose to learn from them, AKA Kevin and Alan. And so I think it's okay sometimes to just self-assess and recognize that it's okay if you don't have those people. You're going to find them, but know that you don't have to go through it all by yourself. Those people do exist. Sometimes we just have to look a little bit harder.
They're there. And the other thing is you became the type of person. That's the other thing too, is you become the type of person that you want to surround yourself with as well. So there's a lot of layers to it. There's a lot of layers to all of this.
100%. Okay, Kev, I want to pivot us a little bit.
Okay.
I like to have a balance of peak performance, growth, mental health simultaneously.
Okay.
A huge thing I wanted to poke your brain about today is around the word success. So when most of us think of the word success, and I encourage you all listening right now to notice what comes up even when I say that, we almost picture this glorified, easy life, kicking back on the beach, rain and money, enjoying everything in life. We know that that is far from the truth behind the scenes, especially if you are someone who's very passionate driven and hard driven, which you are. What do you believe is the biggest misconception when it comes to success being where you are now?
Success equals ease and or continuous flow of happiness. And I just don't, number one, an easy life does not exist. And if an easy life does exist, it's setting you up for a really, really, really hard life later. You just don't know it yet. And happiness is great, but happiness is not a sustainable fuel source for most people. It's just, you can get happy in a lot of different, if I go have a beer right now, I'll probably feel happy. But if I have 15 beers, things are going to go off the rails. I can watch Netflix for an hour and I'll probably get a momentary jolt of happiness. But if I watch it for 15 hours a day, that ain't it either. Fulfillment. I really do believe now more than ever. I had a really long day on Tuesday, because we did group coaching Tuesday night. I started my day at 5:00 in the morning. I woke up, I went to the gym. I went straight from the gym to PT. I went straight from PT home. I made breakfast. I fed the cats. I got on a coaching call. I had a 15-hour day on Tuesday. And I got to the end of the day and I was like, that was a really, really, really fulfilling day. I feel good. I feel really, really good. I wasn't happy. I was tired as hell, but I was fulfilled. I was very, very, very fulfilled. And I think that happiness is results-based If this interview goes well, I will be happy. If Jessie likes me, I will be happy. Regardless of how any of this goes, I am fulfilled because I'm in the process of doing what I love. I'm in the process of growing, and I'm in the process of contributing to something far greater than myself. So I used to think success is car, money, house, all of that stuff, really. Mm-hmm. Now more than ever, I believe it is fulfillment, and I believe it is purpose, and I believe it is all those things. Because here's the interesting thing. If you love the process of getting all the nice things, that's a better life than just wanting all the nice things. And if you love the process, and the process involves adding to other people's lives, if it involves growing and contributing, and it involves learning about yourself and the rest of the world, that's a really, really powerful life. Fulfillment, I believe, more than anything, is my redefinition of success.
I hope everybody listening right now is just allowing yourself a moment to take a deep breath in hearing that answer. We're all chasing, I think, not all of us. I think a part of our brain is always chasing what society views as glorification. And that is what I've always loved about Kevin and Alan, is that it's that heart-driven piece that goes with your guys' mission. That fulfillment piece that goes with your mission. I think that that is one of the biggest things that if you guys could take away one thing from today, knowing how much more sustainable that is as well. If you're playing for the wrong thing, you might get all the bells and whistles, but if you're left feeling unfulfilled, it's likely not going to be sustainable, and you're going to be questioning some things that you're doing. So I hope that that answer inspires you guys to reflect and say, fulfillment in some ways has to be very high in your motivators. Within that, Kev, we know that common saying, when you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. And I think you've maybe been asked this before, but I want to know, based on what you just shared, what is something you can tell the audience? Because I'm sure there's days, like you said, Tuesday was a hard day, but at the end of the day, you were still fulfilled. Some days it's still hard to show up, but you always thank yourself for showing up. So what is your take on that quote? When you love what you do, you never work a day in your life.
I think it sounds really good, but I don't think it's true. Just based on the fact that you can love what you do, but there are many things that come with the things that come with loving what you do. So I love podcasting, but I don't love tracking the finances every day and that. I don't enjoy that. That's nothing. I mean, it's cool, right? When there's money coming in, it's like, oh, wow, we're making money. That's great. But that's not my favorite thing in the world. I'm not passionate about tracking finances, but that is a necessity that comes with the stuff that I love. So I think it sounds really good, but I don't know if it's something to shoot for, because, you know, I'm blessed and I'm privileged and I'm grateful to be able to podcast. I'm wearing pajamas, low waist. It's always pajamas. I am so grateful. But here's the other thing. Me podcasting is only 30 minutes times 7. What's that? 3.5 hours a week on our show. And then maybe, another 3.5 hours. So I'm only really podcasting for 7 hours a week. There's a lot of other hours where I'm doing other stuff that isn't necessarily as fulfilling, posting on social media, whatever it is. That, I think that's an important understanding is, yeah, on the front end, I love what I do, so it never looks like I'm working. The only time you ever see me is when I'm doing what I love, because all the other times I'm doing other stuff behind the scenes and the pressures that come with that. So I would say when you do what you love, you're more grateful for the work that you get to do. But I don't know if aspiring not to work is the goal. Yeah, I feel like I'd be misleading people if I said that.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that, Kev. And that's something that I always want to lead with the lens of on this podcast of there has to be a component of you that enjoys what you do.
Of course.
Again, coming back to that other question, that fulfillment. But I think it would be naive to say that every single day you're just waking up going, hell yeah, can't wait to get on it again. Super pumped. That's just not how it works. And so I think being transparent with that is just a refreshing feeling to have as well. If at anything, I want everybody listening today to feel just relief and desire to chase something, knowing that it's likely not what you think it is, but if you're following your heart while knowing it's not always going to be easy, should be fulfilling, might not always be easy. Thanking yourself for doing something, even when you don't want to do it. Yeah. So the final question I have for you, Kev, is you have been on how many other podcasts? How many podcasts in general? Like, what's like, if we could guesstimate a number?
We could guesstimate a number. I would say, I don't know, probably like over 2,000 for sure.
Okay. So on top of your guys' is over 3,500, 3,400 podcasts.
No. 2,000 total. Yeah, 2,000 total. Yeah.
Which is already.
Eventually we'll get there, but not yet.
Listen, 2,000 is already pretty high up there. So as someone who has podcasted probably more, I would want to say probably more than anyone. I don't know. I'd have to fact check that. Would you say
there's people ahead of me. I'm definitely in the 1% of the 1%. Like, yeah. But there's definitely people who Joe Rogan's got more probably. There's people out there for sure, but I'm coming for it.
Oh yeah. I believe that. So as someone who's podcasted more than the vast majority of people, I can imagine you have got to witness a large range of personalities and people and work ethics and all those things. The last question I would love to ask you is, what have you found to be the biggest excuse people use not to take action based on everything we said today? But for a lot of people have like that one thing, there's like a common thing. What would you say is the most common reason people don't take action?
The most common reason, I think it's lack of belief. It's simple. It's either inaccurate self-belief or inaccurate self-worth. I have not found any in all of the coaching, and I'm hopefully you'll ask Alan the same question because I'm interested to see what he'll say. But it's either people don't believe in themselves enough to start, or they believe they don't have to start. Either one of those, you're in trouble, or you don't feel like you're worthy enough to start. Your self-worth is low, or you feel like you're so worthy that you should have the results long before you ever start. It really is, because I don't know if anybody is truly at 5 with that. If you consider like being super balanced and well-rounded, it's okay. Think of it this way. You are somebody who's very confident, but you probably overcooked the turkey in terms of having guests on because you didn't believe, maybe you didn't have that belief yet. There are other people who are on the other end of like, I shouldn't have to have guests on. I just shouldn't have to. I should win regardless. I would say inaccurate self-belief and or inaccurate self-worth. And at the end of the day, here's why. Because action is the cure-all. If you don't believe in yourself, you got to take action so you get proof. Then you have recent and relevant proof and you can do it again. If you're arrogant, you need to be humbled. And if you don't take action, you're never going to get humility. And then the self-worth thing is kind of the same, right? If you're somebody who struggles with self-worth, you've convinced yourself you're not worthy of success. You'll never try. And if you shouldn't have to try because you're so worthy of success, you'll never try. It's a very, very interesting thing. I used to think it was a lot of external stuff, but over the years and the conversations and the podcasts and the coaching, I have realized how important the internal stuff is, right? Like that, I mean, that is mental health in a nutshell, all of that.
A higher answer.
I appreciate it.
I am so grateful, Kev, because I think we both started our journeys in different places, but both with a lot of similarities of not really having a lot of belief in ourselves or not thinking that we did. Our evidence didn't prove to match belief that we might have had deep down, but we didn't really feel like we were worthy of it. And so I hope folks can take this opportunity to see that through taking action, as you mentioned, self-belief can grow. And as it grows, your results will grow. And I think that that's a beautiful thing. But until you get out of your own way is basically something I like to tell myself through experiences, through fear chasing, through failure, through all the things we talked about today, you can heighten that level of self-belief, which is something we talk about all the time on my podcast, because I know exactly what it's like to not feel like you're worthy not feeling like you have the belief in yourself, but it is only through actions, through fear chasing, that we can get to that place. So Kevin, thank you so much for taking the time to join me today. Where can folks learn more from you? Where can they find you? Where can they connect with you?
Simplest thing, just search Next Level University. We're on all the platforms. We're on YouTube, all that happy jazz. You'll learn very quickly, A, these are my type of people. B, these are not. Either way, I love you. No hard feelings. And then the best place is probably Instagram. If you want to connect with me, @NeverQuitKid is me.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys all so much for tuning into today's episode of Rewire to Inspire. I look forward to chatting with you all next week. Kevin, thank you again. It has been an honor.
Thank you, Jessie.
Awesome. Talk to you all soon.
Thank you all so much for tuning into today's episode of Rewire to Inspire. I absolutely love connecting with you all, so make sure you're following me on Instagram. I am @JessieBrown13. If you enjoyed today's episode, please feel free to leave a review or share with someone you think would enjoy. I look forward to chatting with you all next episode. And remember, get out of your head and into your heart.